My mom called my pregnancy a mistake and tried to give my baby to my sister. So I documented it, took them to court, and crushed their hopes. I never thought that being pregnant would become the greatest sin of my life. Until my mother told me that this baby didn't belong to me. Let me tell you something. I'm Amelia Carter, 31 years old, and I've spent the last 9 years of my life working the emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital. You know what that job teaches you? That life is precious, fragile, and absolutely worth fighting for. I'd been on my own for 2 years after a relationship that just fizzled out. No drama, no cheating, just two people who realized they wanted completely different futures. And honestly, I thought I was doing just fine. My little apartment was filled with plants that somehow managed to survive under my care. I had a career I loved, and independence felt pretty damn good. But life has this funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. That Tuesday morning in March started like any other. Coffee, shower, getting ready for another 12-hour shift. Then I realized I was late, not late for work, but late. You know what I mean. So I found myself standing in my bathroom at 6 in the morning, staring at a pregnancy test like it held the secrets of the universe. 2 pink lines, clear as day. My hands were literally trembling as I counted backward on my phone's calendar, checking and double-checking dates. 8 weeks. Holy shit. 8 weeks pregnant. Now, the father situation wasn't exactly what you'd call conventional. Marcus was this incredibly sweet paramedic I'd been seeing for about 2 months earlier that winter. Nothing serious, just good company and genuine affection. When he got offered a position with the trauma unit in Portland, we both knew it was over. No hard feelings, no promises to stay in touch beyond the occasional "how's life" text. We were adults about it. Calling him about the pregnancy was probably one of the most terrifying conversations of my life. I mean, what do you even say? "Hey Marcus, remember that time 3 months ago?" Well, funny story. But you know what? He was amazing about it. Completely blindsided, obviously, but he immediately started talking about child support, flying back for doctor appointments, being involved however he could despite living across the country. It wasn't the romantic fairy tale I'd imagined if I ever got pregnant, but it felt solid, real, like we could make this work somehow. The moment I hung up that phone, something shifted inside me. This tiny cluster of cells growing in my body wasn't just a surprise anymore. It was my baby, my child. I felt this fierce, almost primal protectiveness that I'd never experienced before. It was like my entire world had suddenly been reorganized around this one incredible fact: I was going to be a mother. I spent the rest of that week in this strange bubble of joy and terror, making mental lists of everything I needed to figure out. Maternity leave policies at the hospital, childcare options, whether my tiny one-bedroom apartment could accommodate a crib. It was overwhelming, sure, but it was also exciting in a way that surprised me. Sunday dinner at Mom's house was a tradition that went back to my childhood. Every week, Margaret Carter, 59 years old, retired elementary school teacher, and the self-appointed keeper of all family traditions, would cook enough food to feed a small army. It was her way of making sure the family stayed connected, she always said. Mom took immense pride in being what she called the heart of the family, the one who remembered birthdays, organized holidays, and generally made sure we all stayed in each other's lives. My sister Vanessa would usually be there with her husband David. At 35, Vanessa was everything our mother had hoped for in a daughter. Successful property lawyer, beautiful home in the suburbs, married to a steady, reliable man who worshipped the ground she walked on. The only thing missing from their perfect picture was children, and God knows they'd been trying. 7 years of fertility treatments, specialists, procedures with names I couldn't pronounce. I'd watched my sister transform from someone who casually mentioned trying for a baby to someone whose entire identity seemed wrapped up in her inability to get pregnant. Every family gathering had become a minefield of carefully avoided topics. We didn't talk about baby showers she couldn't attend, didn't mention cute kids we'd seen at the grocery store, didn't ask about her latest doctor's appointment unless she brought it up first. Vanessa's struggle with infertility had become this heavy cloud that hung over all of us, and we'd all learned to tiptoe around it. So when I walked into Mom's kitchen that Sunday evening, breathing in the familiar smell of her famous pot roast, I was practically vibrating with excitement. This was good news, right? The first grandchild. The baby that would finally bring some joy back into our family dinners. I had this whole vision of how it would go. Mom would cry happy tears. Vanessa would hug me and start planning to be the best aunt ever. David would probably make some joke about teaching the kid to throw a baseball. I waited until we were all seated, until Mom had said grace and we'd started passing dishes around. Then I couldn't contain myself anymore. "I have wonderful news," I announced, setting down my water glass with probably more force than necessary. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was deafening, like someone had sucked all the sound out of the room. I watched Vanessa's fork literally slip from her fingers and clatter against her plate, the sound abnormally loud in the sudden stillness. Mom's face went through this strange transformation, her smile flickering like a broken light bulb before being replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Concern? Disappointment? David just sat there looking like he wished he could disappear into his chair. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. The pot roast might as well have been cardboard for all the appetite I had left. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence, and her voice sounded wrong, flat, empty. Are you sure you want to keep it?" I actually felt the blood drain from my face. "What did you just say?" "I mean," she continued, not meeting my eyes, "have you thought about all your options?" "All my options. Like my pregnancy was some kind of problem that needed solving." "Of course I want to keep it," I said, and I could hear my voice getting sharper. "Why on earth would you ask me that?" That's when Mom jumped in, and I recognized the tone immediately. It was her teacher voice, calm, reasonable, but with an undertone that suggested you were about to learn something you didn't want to know. "Sweetheart, you need to think about this realistically. You're single, your job is incredibly demanding, and you work 12-hour shifts. Raising a child alone is one of the hardest things a person can do." "I'm not alone," I protested, looking around the table for some sign of support, some indication that someone was happy for me. "I have family. I have all of you." The look that passed between Mom and Vanessa was so quick I almost missed it, but it was there. Some kind of silent communication that made my stomach drop. "That's exactly what we're worried about," Vanessa said, and now her voice had an edge to it. "Amy, this isn't fair." "What isn't fair? Me being pregnant?" She leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "You know what David and I have been through. You know how long we've been trying, how much money we've spent, how many times we've gotten our hopes up only to have them crushed. And now you just accidentally get pregnant, and you think you can handle single motherhood?" The word accidentally hit me like a slap. Like my pregnancy was some kind of careless mistake, an oops that inconvenienced her fertility journey. "I didn't plan this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but I'm happy about it. I already love this baby." "Love isn't enough, honey," Mom interrupted, and the condescending tone made my teeth clench. "Children need stability. They need two-parent homes, financial security, consistent care. Vanessa and David can provide all of those things." And there it was. The elephant in the room, stated so matter-of-factly that it took my breath away. I looked around the table again, really looked at their faces this time. Vanessa's expression wasn't flat anymore. It was hopeful, eager, like someone who'd just spotted exactly what she wanted in a store window. Mom's face had that determined set to it that I remembered from childhood. The look she got when she'd made up her mind about something and wouldn't be swayed. Even David, who usually stayed out of family drama, was leaning forward slightly, engaged in this conversation in a way that made my skin crawl. "You want me to give them my baby," I whispered. "We want what's best for the child," Mom said, each word carefully chosen. "And what's best for this family." I pushed back from the table so hard my chair almost tipped over. The room was spinning slightly, and I wasn't sure if it was pregnancy hormones or pure shock. "I need some air." "Amy, wait," Vanessa called, but I was already heading for the door. "I have a headache," I lied, grabbing my purse and keys. "I need to go home." But of course they didn't let it go. Over the next few weeks the campaign began in earnest. Mom would call me during my breaks at work, always starting with innocent questions about how I was feeling before launching into carefully worded concerns about single motherhood. She'd email me articles about children from broken homes, statistics about poverty rates among single mothers, studies about the importance of father figures. Vanessa took a more direct approach. She'd show up at my apartment unannounced, always carrying some kind of pamphlet or brochure. Open adoption. The beautiful gift of giving childless couples a chance at parenthood. How adoption was really an act of love. Putting the child's needs above your own desires. Think about it logically, Amy. she said during one of these visits, settling onto my couch like she belonged there while I nibbled saltines and tried not to throw up. You're only 28. You have plenty of time to have children later, when you're married and settled. But I'm 35. My fertility window is closing fast. This might literally be our only chance to become parents. It's my baby, Vanessa. But is it fair? The question came out sharp, like she'd been holding it back and finally couldn't anymore. Is it fair for you to have something so easily when we've worked so hard for it? When we've invested everything, our savings, our time, our emotional energy, into trying to have a child? When we're so much more prepared to be parents than you are? The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity, like my unplanned pregnancy was somehow a betrayal of her fertility struggles. The guilt tactics escalated from there. Mom started bringing up everything they'd ever done for me. The college tuition they'd helped with, the down payment assistance on my apartment, every family vacation and birthday gift and Christmas present. She made it crystal clear that continuing with this pregnancy would be viewed as selfish, ungrateful, a slap in the face to the family that had supported me. We're not asking you to give the baby to strangers, she said during one particularly manipulative phone call. This would keep the child in the family. You'd still be involved as the aunt. You could be part of their life without the burden of single parenthood. Think about how perfect that arrangement would be for everyone. But I knew better. I'd lived with Vanessa's controlling nature my entire life. I'd seen how she managed every detail of her marriage, her career, her social life. If I gave her my child, I would become a glorified babysitter, useful when convenient, dismissed when not needed. The child would be raised to see Vanessa and David as the real parents, while I remained the aunt who'd given them the greatest gift, and should therefore be eternally grateful for whatever scraps of involvement they allowed me. The final straw came at week 12, when I found out they'd already been making plans without my consent. I discovered this accidentally when Vanessa's phone rang during lunch and I saw the caller ID, Adoption Attorney Johnson. You've already contacted a lawyer? Her face flushed. We just wanted to understand the process in case I decided, or in case you convinced me. Amy, please. We're trying to help you see reason. I stood up, my hand instinctively moving to my still small belly. The only thing I see clearly is that you've already decided what's going to happen to my child. That evening, I went through Vanessa's purse while she was in the bathroom at Mom's house. What I found broke something inside me. Business cards for adoption attorneys, brochures for parenting classes, and a notebook with a detailed timeline. Week 12. Get Amy to sign preliminary agreement. Week 16. Finalize legal documents. Week 20. Announce pregnancy to friends. They had planned to announce my pregnancy as their own once they had my signature on the papers. When Vanessa returned, I confronted her with the notebook. You were going to pretend this baby was yours from the beginning. Mom tried to intervene. Honey, it's not about pretending. It's exactly about pretending, I shouted, all my suppressed anger finally erupting. You want to steal my child and rewrite history so that Vanessa gets to be the mother and I disappear into the background. We just want what's best. For who? For the baby or for Vanessa? Vanessa finally dropped her mask. Yes, for me. Do you have any idea what it's like to want something so badly and watch it slip away month after month, year after year, and then you just stumble into pregnancy without even trying? Without even wanting it at first? So that gives you the right to take my child? It gives me the right to ask for fairness. You'll have other chances, Amy. This might be my only one. Then maybe you should accept that not everyone gets everything they want. The room erupted. Mom accused me of being cruel and selfish. Vanessa cried about her dreams of motherhood being crushed by my stubbornness. David, who had remained silent through most of these confrontations, finally spoke. Amy, we're not trying to steal anything. We're offering to raise your child with all the advantages we can provide. Private schools, college funds, 2 parents who desperately want children. Can you honestly say you can offer the same? I can offer love, unconditional, fierce, protective love. Can you say the same, or do you just want a baby to complete your perfect life picture? The question hung in the air, and their inability to answer it immediately told me everything I needed to know. That night, I made my decision. I called my supervisor and requested a transfer to the day shift, which would be more suitable for pregnancy and eventually single motherhood. I started researching childcare options and budgeting for baby expenses. Most importantly, I changed my emergency contacts at the hospital and updated my will to ensure that if anything happened to me, my child would go to my college roommate Sarah, not to my family. When I announced my plans at the next family dinner, the reaction was explosive. "You're making a huge mistake," Mom said, her voice cold. "Don't expect us to bail you out when reality hits. I don't expect anything from any of you anymore. You're going to regret this," Vanessa warned. "When you're exhausted and broke and overwhelmed, remember that we offered you a better option. The only thing I'll regret is wasting so much time trying to please people who never really cared about what I wanted." I walked out of that house and didn't look back. They called, texted, and even showed up at my apartment a few times, but I held firm. By my second trimester, the contact had stopped entirely. Pregnancy without family support was challenging, but not impossible. My colleagues at the hospital became my chosen family, throwing me a baby shower and offering to help with childcare. Sarah flew in from Seattle to be my birth coach. Marcus sent money monthly and promised to visit when he could. On a snowy December morning, I gave birth to James Marcus Carter, a perfect, healthy boy with the loudest cry in the maternity ward. As I held him for the first time, I felt a completeness I'd never experienced. This was my son, born from my body, nurtured by my love, and no one could take that away from me. The first year was exhausting but joyful. James was a good baby, sleeping through the night early and charming everyone at the hospital daycare. I thrived as a mother, discovering reserves of patience and love I didn't know I possessed. We had our struggles, teething, sleep regressions, my own exhaustion, but we handled them together. I heard through mutual friends that Vanessa and David had divorced 2 years after James was born. The stress of infertility treatments and the disappointment of not getting my baby had apparently strained their marriage beyond repair. Mom was reportedly lonely, missing both her daughters, me by choice, Vanessa by geography, as she'd moved across the country after the divorce. 3 years passed peacefully. James started preschool, I got promoted to charge nurse, and we settled into a comfortable routine. I even started dating again, a kind pediatrician named Michael, who adored James and treated him like his own son. Then, on James's 4th birthday, everything changed. I was frosting his dinosaur cake when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's number, the first time she'd called in over 4 years. "Hello, Amy." Her voice was smaller than I remembered, uncertain. "Mom, I wanted to wish James a happy birthday." The statement was so unexpected, so presumptuous, that I was momentarily speechless. "You don't get to do that. He's my grandson. He's my son. You made it very clear 4 years ago that you had no interest in being his grandmother." "I made a mistake." The words came out in a rush. "Amy, I made a terrible mistake. Can we please talk?" Before I could answer, I heard another voice in the background. "Is that her? Let me talk to her." "Vanessa." "Amy?" Vanessa's voice was shaky, desperate. "Please, can we just meet? Just once? I need to see him. I need to see my nephew." "Your nephew?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. 4 years ago, you didn't want him to be your nephew. You wanted him to be your son. I was wrong. I was so wrong, and I'm sorry. The divorce, losing the house, losing David, I've lost everything. Please don't let me lose James too. You never had James to lose. But I could have. I should have been in his life all along. I should have been the aunt who spoiled him and took him to movies and taught him about our family history. Instead, he doesn't even know I exist. That was true. James knew he had a grandmother and aunt somewhere, but I'd never shown him pictures or talked about them in detail. He knew they'd made me sad once, and that was enough for him. "Why now?" I asked. "What's changed?" Mom took the phone back. "Vanessa can't have children. The doctors confirmed it. Early menopause, complete reproductive failure. This is it for our family line, Amy. James is the only grandchild I'll ever have." The manipulation was stunning even by their standards. "So now that Vanessa can't have the biological children she wanted more than my son, you remember that James exists? We want to be part of his life. We want to be family again. We were never family. Family doesn't try to steal each other's children. We were misguided, but we love you both." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "No, you don't get to call it love. Love doesn't come with conditions and expiration dates. Love doesn't disappear because someone makes a choice you don't like. Amy, please, I have to go. James's party is starting soon." Wait, can't we at least send him birthday gifts? Can't we? I hung up. But they didn't give up. Cards arrived weekly, addressed to both James and me. Expensive toys showed up at our door. Mom started leaving voicemails with updates about family news, as if we were still in regular contact. Vanessa sent a long letter explaining her infertility diagnosis and begging for a chance to be part of James's life. The final straw came when they showed up at James's preschool. The director called me at work, concerned. "Miss Carter, there were 2 women here today claiming to be James's grandmother and aunt. They said they wanted to surprise him, but he didn't recognize them and became upset. We didn't allow them to take him, of course, but I thought you should know." I left work immediately, my hands shaking with rage and fear. When I arrived at the school, James ran to me, confused and clingy. "Mommy, those ladies said they were my family, but I don't know them. Why did they know my name?" That evening, after I'd calmed James and put him to bed, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer friend Tom, asking about restraining orders. The second was to my mother. "If you or Vanessa ever approach my son again without my permission, I will have you arrested," I said without preamble. "Amy, we just wanted to meet him. You terrified him. He came home asking why strangers knew his name and claimed to be his family. How dare you put him through that? We're not strangers, we're his grandma and aunt." "No, you're not. You gave up that right 4 years ago when you tried to take him from me. But we're family. Family is what I choose it to be. And I choose not to include people who would traumatize my child to satisfy their own needs. Amy, please, just give us one chance. You had your chance. You had multiple chances. You chose Vanessa's wants over my rights as a mother. You chose manipulation over support. You chose conditions over love. Those were your choices, and now you live with the consequences. What about James? Doesn't he deserve to know his family? James has a family. He has me. He has Michael. He has Sarah and her kids who he calls cousins. He has the nurses at the hospital who've watched him grow up. He has love and stability and people who put his needs first. That's what family looks like. But we could give him so much. Like what? The same conditional love you gave me? The same manipulation you tried on me? The same pressure to be grateful for things that should be freely given? There was silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought she might actually be considering my words. Then she said, "You're punishing us for caring too much." That's when I knew nothing had changed. They still didn't understand what they'd done wrong. They still thought their actions had been motivated by love rather than selfishness. I'm protecting my son from people who think love means getting what you want, no matter who gets hurt in the process. I hung up and blocked their numbers. 2 weeks later, I received a legal notice. Vanessa was petitioning for grandparent visitation rights on behalf of herself and our mother. The audacity was stunning but not surprising. Tom handled the case pro bono and it was dismissed quickly. The judge noted that grandparent rights typically apply when there's been an existing relationship that's been unfairly severed, not when grandparents have been absent by choice for the child's entire life. Still, the legal threat made me realize I needed to take additional steps to protect James. I updated my will again, this time with detailed instructions about who should never have custody of my son. I documented their attempts to circumvent my parental authority. Most importantly, I started the process to legally change James's name from James Carter to James Carter Johnson, adding Michael's surname to create a legal barrier between my son and my birth family. The name change was finalized on James's 5th birthday. That evening, as we celebrated with Michael and our chosen family, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. James was legally and practically safe from people who would use him as a pawn in their emotional games. Now, 2 years later, James is 7 years old and thriving. He's funny, kind, and curious about the world. He knows he has a biological father in another state who sends cards and calls sometimes. And he knows Mommy and Daddy Michael love him more than anything. He's never asked about the grandmother and aunt who terrorized him at school, and I hope he never has to. Michael and I married last year in a small ceremony where James served as ring bearer, watching my son beam with pride as he walked down the aisle, knowing he felt secure and loved and wanted. I realized I'd made every right choice along the way. Sometimes I wonder if Mom and Vanessa think about James on his birthday, or if they've found other ways to fill the holes in their lives. I hope they have. But their healing isn't my responsibility. My responsibility is to the little boy who calls me Mommy and trusts me to keep him safe. People sometimes ask if I'll ever reconcile with my family, especially for James's sake. They suggest that everyone deserves forgiveness, that family bonds are sacred, that James might want to know his biological grandmother someday. But I've learned that not all family bonds are worth preserving. Some relationships are toxic from the start, built on control rather than love, conditions rather than acceptance. The people who truly love you don't try to steal your children or manipulate your choices or disappear when you don't give them what they want. Real family shows up without being asked. Real family celebrates your victories without trying to claim them. Real family protects your children instead of using them as emotional bargaining chips. James has real family. It's just not the family I was born into. And that's perfectly fine with me. The other night as I was tucking James into bed, he looked up at me with his serious brown eyes and said, "Mommy, I'm glad you're my mommy. I'm glad I'm your mommy too, sweetheart. Will you always be my mommy? Always and forever, no matter what." He smiled and drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally. And as I watched him sleep, I felt grateful for every difficult choice that led me to this moment. This perfect, peaceful moment with my son, my real family, my everything. I learned that love isn't about sharing DNA or fulfilling other people's expectations. It's about showing up consistently, protecting fiercely, and choosing each other every single day. James and I choose each other. And that's the strongest family bond of all.